Despite my skepticism, I've always been a fan of a good horror story. A few weeks ago, I stumbled across some reviews online about a supposedly amazing new horror novel. I'll copy two of the reviews that stood out the most to me. Do note, I edited the reviews slightly to fix the spelling and grammatical errors. Creepy and Disturbing is a fantastic novel worth of at least one read. It explores the psyche of a human mind and our approach to things we find creepy and supernatural. The author did a fantastic job setting up the story and tearing apart the mind to explore our deepest, darkest fears. But I highly recommend purchasing this book before it's too late. Too late? Why would it be too late? Even if it sells out in a few months, secondhand copies will show up all over the place. There's never a perfect time to read a book, but as for a second review, do not touch this book. Stay as far away from it as possible. If it's in a library or store near you, my best advice is to move, find a new place to stay, or better yet, burn down that location. Either get as far away from it as possible, or destroy it as soon as possible. This book is demonic. It is pure evil, and should never even be acknowledged. May our Father forgive us. Now, I don't know exactly why this review stood out so much to me at the time, but after all, it's probably just the ravings of another religious fanatic, right? Well, hindsight's a bitch. Perhaps if I was a bit smarter, perhaps if I was slightly less skeptical, I wouldn't have brushed it off like that. But that's what I did. So, being a fan of a good horror, I decided to purchase a book. It took rather a while to get delivered, to the point I had almost forgotten about it. The day it did arrive was a strange one. An unmarked black van pulled into my driveway. Now, while I'm skeptic of supernatural dangers, I'm also aware about the ones that the real world presents. A man in a black hat and suit stepped out of the van, approached my gate. I quickly grabbed my phone and went to dial 911. Something stopped me in my tracks, though. He called out my full name. How would we know that? His next comment quickly answered that. He had a delivery for me. He held up a black book with white words engraved near the top. I squinted and could make out the title of the book that I ordered. I went outside and accepted the delivery. Where do I sign? I asked, slightly taken back by the strangeness of this whole affair. What kind of delivery company doesn't have a logo? Not necessary, he responded with a gravely voice and the tip of his hat. Enjoy. He turned and walked back to his van. Wait! Wait! I called out. I had so many questions. But he just seemed to ignore me as he entered the van and slowly backed out of the driveway. I stood there at the gate, reading the title. It certainly was the book I ordered, with a small price tag at the bottom, the exact price I had paid online. I flipped the book open, and the very first page was completely blank, except for that black text in the center. In memory of the damned, as you read their stories, remember, always one simple rule. Never say their names out loud. I shook my head. That was likely just some comment for the immersion's sake. I snapped the book closed and headed inside. I made myself a cup of tea and got comfortable. It was getting late, and a creepy story and a warm drink was a perfect way to end the day. The few pages were your run-of-the-mill horror, small children screaming for their parents about monsters they saw under the bed, strange sightings when the power goes out, and so on. The more I read, though, progressively, strangely, and more personal it got. There was a story that started on page 39 about a child who nearly drowned in a pool. It described the environment in such a poetic detail. Around the pool was a brick path. Beside it were multiple fruit trees, under which sat a white stone bench. The environment sounded so similar to the pool in my parents' old place. I chalk it up to a coincidence until the child was named. My name. My name. In a moment of shock and awe, I read the name again, out loud. Was this book about me? I continued reading, and it described a banshee-like creature with long black claws dragging the child into the water by their ankles. I remembered that no one believed me. I just went too deep. I wasn't ready. Just an accident near drowning. Monsters aren't real, and so the story went to the book as well. No one believed the child about this banshee they clearly saw. This book was about me. How? I didn't recognize the author's name or anything about this book. I only told the story of a few people. They did not tell it to other people and it spread. That must be it. This book is a collection of short stories from all over the globe. This was likely just a case of someone in my family knowing someone who knew the author, and he just never came up. Still, I found it very annoying that he didn't bother changing my name. That's how these books usually go. All the names have been changed for the safety of the victims. Nothing like that one on the front page though. My emotions quickly went from the concern of mild irritation at the amateur nature of the author. I finished reading the book. I finished reading the story about the child that nearly drowned, despite knowing exactly how it would end. But something caught my eye. The ending was different, and there, as a child lay asleep outside the bedroom, Window stood the banshee, waiting to strike again. Was this added fiction just for the sake of a little scare? Did he know something more than I thought? These thoughts raced across my mind, but ultimately, I thought it was pointless to go on a mental journey about some dumb book, closed the book and set it on my desk, and then went to sleep. The next morning when I woke up, the first thing I noticed scared me to the core. There against the bedroom window were several long scratches downward, scratches that slightly cracked the window. It's important that you understand. My bedroom window is situated in a pathway with a very tall lock gates on either side, and across the window is a very tall wall with electric wire. The likelihood that someone would just get there during the night and scratch the window without me noticing is very slim. There aren't trees or animals that could have done that either, and none of this would crack the window just scratching it. I tried to explain the scratches as the best I could, but I could not find any logical explanation. Was the book right? Was the banshee back? Because I read my own name out loud? I felt so dumb to even consider that as an option. Ghosts? Monsters? Ghosts and monsters aren't real. Books don't hold any supernatural power. In that swimming pool, I was drowning. I was delusional. But what else could have caused this? There was one course of action I could think of. In the case that this was some supernatural force at work, I grabbed the book and went to the grill outside. I dropped it inside and set it alight, watching as the fire slowly consumed it, paper coiling on itself and turning to ash with each passing second. I started at the fire as it burned for nearly half an hour and slowly burned out. And that was all and done. I went on a walk to clear my mind. I tried to answer any questions I had about this whole ordeal. I couldn't. Some of it just didn't make any sense. When I finally returned home, I went to my study with the intent to go back to work. I was halted in my tracks by the most disturbing sight. However, there, sitting on my desk, just as I had left it the night before, was the damn book. The same one I burned. Did someone see me burning it? Then sneak in and replace it while I was out? Once again, that would be very difficult considering the secure nature of my home. With all the lock gates and electric wire, perhaps this was just a very determined prankster. When I was younger, I did have a friend who would do these sort of things all the time, though he passed away a few years ago, and they thought that this was a fun way to pass the time. I flipped the book open to read that rule again.
In memory of the damned, as you read their stories, remember always one simple rule: never say their names out loud.
Was the first line supposed to mean something? Were they referring to this old friend? If this was a prank, I had to hand it to them. They certainly put in a lot of effort. Slightly disturbing, using a person's dead friend to play a joke on them. But that's the way of some people. Once again, a small spell of paranoia poked at the back of my mind. If at all this was supernatural, I had to get rid of this damn book. I grabbed it and decided to go on a drive. My town is surrounded by a very large mountains. And somewhere in those mountains are deep rivers. I drove up to the mountain gates. No matter. I got out of the car and climbed over the gate, then made my way up to the path. I didn't notice it at first, but the sun was setting, which meant that the animals would be coming out soon. At least I knew to expect strange noises. As I hiked towards the river, I felt a very chilling sensation across my body, as if the winter had come early. That was very strange, given it was the middle of summer. I chalked it up to the nightly air and continued on my way. After about an hour of hiking, I finally made it out of the river and dropped the book in the water. My eye caught something that made my heart sink. As the book touched the water, something swam underneath it. Something that looked human. At this time of day, there's almost no one around, and less so anyone swimming. I tried to make my way back to the car as quickly as possible, trying to ignore what I saw. There was no logical explanation outside of the supernatural, none that I could come up with anyway, and I did not want to accept the latter. The drive home was unnerving, to say the least. My mind was stuck on that one moment. What was under that book? Was it some random person swimming? Was it something else? I couldn't sleep that night. I tried and failed. The tapping on my window kept me awake, but I dare not look to confirm my suspicions. I kept my back to the window all night. Once the sun started rising and casting light into my room, the tapping stopped. I got up and immediately went to my study. I didn't look inside. I just closed and locked the door. I didn't have to look. I know that book is on my desk. Each night, it's the same thing. The tapping on my window is steady. I've gotten used to it. Ironically, it helps me fall asleep now. I'm not going to look. I know what's outside.